We are reviewing the Japanese kaiju movie called The Whale God. It's also known in some places as Killer Whale because we are at the Forbidden Worlds Film Festival. I'm Mike from Genuine Chit-Chat. This is Spider-Dan from Spider-Dan the Secret Boars. And again, we're here at Forbidden Worlds Film Festival 2025. Hey guys, just a quick thing before this review gets started. You can actually watch The Whale God in full on YouTube. In the review of it, we actually say that you can't find it anywhere, but you can find it on YouTube. And also there is a trigger warning. We will give you a warning when you get there, but just a trigger warning because the film does contain sexual assault, which we will talk about in this review. Anyway, hope you enjoy. So this was the first ever UK screening of, again, this Japanese kaiju movie called The Whale God. It was released in 1962, and I was trying to find, before pressing record, we both were, if there's any way to watch it in the UK, and at present, it doesn't seem possible in any way. There might be certain places on the internet you might be able to go, but I cannot find anywhere, and I wouldn't recommend those other places. But it's also kind of hard to find even find anything about it online.
Yes, yeah.
All the articles are literally just talking about it being premiered at this Bristol Film Festival.
I think maybe the SEO, the search engine optimization, is based purely on Bristol saying we're going to play this.
Which is great for Forbidden World Film Festival, it's so good for that. But, it's got a Wikipedia page. And on IMDb, it's under The Killer Whale. It's a film 1962, and it's basically like a somewhat adaptation of Moby Dick in certain respects.
Yeah.
And I was really, really excited to see this. I'll put an image up so you'll be able to see the iconic image that will know you're looking at the right thing. But I assume you've never heard of this film.
I'd never heard of it. I didn't do any research on this one. I just knew it was a Japanese version of kind of Ahab and Moby Dick. And I think Ty, before we went in, he said, there's a lot of Jaws in here too. And I agree with that, with what he said.
Yes.
In regards to the town and the terror that this one creature is causing and turning them all against each other. And say what you will, but I think we were talking about double bills on the other podcasts. I think Orca, the killer whale, and this have a lot in common. I think there's a lot.
They fit in with the festival very well, and they're different enough.
Yeah. Is it a good double bill of two good films? We'll discuss. But
yes.
I think they would go together quite well. There's similar themes, there's similar things that are being explored, I think.
Yes. And I'll say there was an introduction by a gentleman called Stephen Sloss who gave a lot. He's very passionate.
Oh, he was great.
He's got such a vast knowledge of like Japanese movies and things, and he was absolutely incredible.
Yeah, he was listing some real bangers that all these people have been involved in, the companies, Toho they talked about, Zatoichi.
And there's connections to like Seven Samurai, some of the actors that are in this, then go on to do other sort of more popular films. A lot of individuals involved who collaborated with or influenced by Akira Kurosawa, like all these kind of things that are interesting. And I've not watched Rashomon or Seven Samurai, ashamedly. I know what they are, but I'm going to. I've got a thing where I'm like,
I haven't either. To be fair, I haven't. But I do now own them as well. So I should.
Do you? Because I wanted to look up, but I was in. I think it was a HMV one day, and I was like, Akira Kurosawa. I imagine they're not that expensive.
Oh mate,
they are ridiculously expensive.
I went into, I think it's FOP or POP or something.
I remember FOP. Yeah.
So which is like this is where HMV has dumped all their remaining kind of Blu-rays and DVDs, and it's the first time I ever saw them on sale. The Samurai collection. He's got a few other collections. I just went, I'm getting it now.
Wow.
And even then it was still like 25, 30 quid, I think.
Yeah. I was thinking, I'll get like 10 of his movies for like 30 quid. I was like,
no, it's not quite.
That would be nice. Yeah. I just thought because they're so iconic, but also they're so old. Like like Hitchcock, like Alfred Hitchcock movies, you can get them a dime a dozen. Yeah, like absolutely. And it's like pretty much every iconic older director. You can even get like all the Tarantino movies pretty much in a decently priced collection. So I just wrongly thought Akira Kurosawa, I was like, everyone knows of Seven Samurai, everyone knows of Rashomon. There's a few other titles of his that people know about.
Hidden Fortress, which inspired Star Wars as well.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, with all these influences, how much people talk about them, I was like, okay. And then I can't get them cheap. And it's like, and I don't think anywhere streams them. I think you can rent them on like Amazon.
I think you could rent them, but even renting them, I think you might as well kind of buy them.
When it's films of that caliber.
Yeah,
I only want to buy.
I have seen. Me and Andy did a few years ago. We did Theatre of Blood and Ron, which are both excellent. And we did a comparison of those because they're both based on Shakespearean plays.
Yes.
That's all the Akira Kurosawa I have seen so far.
I've not done it. So there's somewhat connections to Akira Kurosawa with these, and also this is again, it's a film in 1962. It's black and white, and it was the film I was the most excited to watch. Outside
you were talking about it so much. I was like Alligator. I'm looking forward to so much. And and there was some certain films that I wanted to know what your reaction would be.
Yes,
like Orca and Back Beyond the Stars. I was looking forward to those reactions. And recording these. But you were like, oh, I'm so looking forward to this. It looks so cool.
It's so different. And I haven't seen that much Japanese cinema, but what I have seen, I've seen quite a few really random weird things. I've mentioned, we've both seen Machine Girl and stuff. And there's a film called Versus that's really cool.
Yeah,
there's
that's good.
There's a lot of like Eastern cinema. There's the more westernized ones like Shaolin Soccer and Kung Fu Hustle, which I don't think are Japanese, but there's quite a few films I have seen of Eastern cinema and Tart and Asian Extreme. I've seen quite a few films.
We did Visit Q famously, or infamously.
And I've seen quite a few other films as well, which are of that kind of that ilk. But so whenever there's an opportunity to watch especially a foreign language film, and especially a Japanese or an Eastern film, I'm really up for it. And like the big poster you see of this, you get to see this big prosthetic,
hulking whale form.
Yeah. And I was like, awesome, kaiju films I like. I don't love them overtly, but I like some of the Godzilla films. I actually really like the Godzilla film with Bryan Cranston and Aaron Taylor-Johnson. Yeah. That no one seems to like as much. I thought it was ace. But I'm not a big Godzilla fan.
Sure.
So I think for Godzilla fans, they're not as much. But I really enjoyed that. I haven't watched all the sequels because I'm not as interested by the MonsterVerse. But like I liked Pacific Rim, the first one. I think that's a Guild of Horror.
I didn't mind the second one. It's not
I didn't watch the second one, but I thought the first one got what I wanted. That was fine. But with this, I was like, okay, it's going to be quite a different take, a really interesting kaiju movie. And again, from the image that we saw, and then in the Forbidden Worlds trailer, I think there's another like moment or so, like a second, where you get to see like a bit of it. And I was like, cool. This is the exact kind of thing that I really want to challenge myself with and watch all these kind of films. And when Steven Sloss was giving like a really cool intro and stuff, I was super hyped for it. And
it was a good it was a good intro.
It was info dump, but it was very good.
Yeah, there was a lot of like deep cuts and connections. And I think he says I think Ty introduced him as being a BFI guy, so British Film Institute,
and he's known in Bristol Uni as the Japanese film guy. And I think they absolutely got the best person to introduce it. And he did really sell it to me, 100%.
And I was like, okay, let's go.
Yeah, and also just to clarify, to give some, I think you. Not only can it's almost impossible seemingly to watch in the UK, on IMDb it's called Killer Whale, and also there's 158 reviews on there. 158. Okay, there are short films that I know of people that I've either had on the pod or that I just know by association who people don't know who they are, and they've released stuff that have got more IMDb ratings. So it really just goes to show how much of a deep cut this film is. Now, before we go into this, I am glad I've seen this. I'm glad I watched it. I could see why people would enjoy it, especially those who like Japanese films. And I understand what this film the influence this film had in unexpected ways. And I do think the prosthetic of the whale, for the most part, works. However, the film is an hour and 40. The first 10-15 minutes is really intense and crazy. It's hard to tell chaotic is the best word. But I still enjoyed it. I was like, oh, cool, this is quite intense. And then outside of the last 10-15 minutes, which we'll get into, the sort of 20 or 30 minutes before the last 15 minutes, I was into. Because that was what I thought all the film was going to be about. But there is about an hour after the first 15 minutes, and is pretty much all talking, but pretty much saying the same thing
over and
over again. Yeah, exactly.
Like Orca.
Like Orca, but. And I understood it when it was the first 20 minutes of it happening, them saying the same thing over and over again. I could see these characters going more and more mad in a way, and I was getting it. But the thing that threw me out of it was, this may be insensitive, the fight scenes were so shit.
Yeah,
the fighting was genuinely awful, and there were like 4 fight scenes of people fighting each other. I'm talking, not fighting a giant whale.
It's like a awkward drunk slugfest as opposed to like a choreographed, beautiful.
You see the bit when people do that, and then and literally it's like if you or I made a film together, we would probably have better
just
fight
rolling,
than that.
just a lot of rolling around, isn't it?
Yeah, and I know it's an older film, 62,
and it's not meant to be a martial arts epic.
No,
it's not meant to be a polished anything like that.
But the short films we saw
were really polished.
They were really polished, but even the ones that weren't as polished, I feel like they were almost the same level.
Oh, absolutely.
But these are short films people made for free, not a fairly decent film studio.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just that. It was when the first fight scene happened, which is the kind of drunk guy fighting the antagonist. I was like, okay, this is a bit sluggish, but I get it because maybe they're both drunk, they're in a group area. It went on a little bit long, but I was like, okay, that's fine. But then almost the same fight with less extraneous connections happened 3 more times.
Yes, and there was no. They didn't really add anything. They didn't really. They just because we already know he's a bit of a bastard.
Yeah.
So let's say he's not a nice guy, which we're going to get into.
Yeah.
But it didn't add anything. It was just like he goes to fight one guy, and then this stranger from another town comes in, and he goes, "Don't fight me again. Fight that guy." And then he comes in and he wants to fight the main character who refuses because his only opponent is the killer whale. It is the whale god. Because, and that's why I found it hard to get into, like we said, it's chaotic because we get all these lovely like miniatures, like you said, and these harpoons going in and there's nets on it. But immediately all the boats are crushed and we go back to the island, and then we come back out, we go back to the island, come back out. And it took me a while because they don't, even throughout the film, there are massive time jumps. Like the space of a year is mostly covered for the majority of the film. But in this opening scene that's just action, again, why do I care? Because I don't know anything about these people or what they're doing or what will this accomplish or how will they feel. But what happens is 2 generations, a grandfather and a father, die. And, they swear that the son will kill the whale god. They'll find a way for the son to kill the whale god and end this suffering for this small town. But then it almost wasn't very clear as well. I was like, who's this? Who's that father? Who's this guy? Who's the grandfather? And then all you can really tell is the women, the wives, and the partners get slightly older.
Well, the thing is that you've just. I realised we kind of dived in, and I didn't explain the plot, which is literally as Dad just said. There's a whale that's, let's say, air quotes, attacking a village. It goes past this village that's on the coast. They go and try and attack it, and every time they do, everyone who tries to gets wiped out.
Yeah.
That happens 3 times consecutively. So the grandfather, father, and then brother of the protagonist get killed.
The brother as well.
And then the film follows the basically the last remaining male of the family who's left. It's him, his mum, and he's got a younger sister as well. And it's his basically obsession with this whale. Okay, and so that's the film for the majority of it. And the sort of big end is he goes after the whale. Okay, but there's the middle bit that's the confusing stuff. And I think the time jump, what weirds me out is you see this character. So the grandfather goes and in a group goes off, everyone dies. Then the father does it pretty much immediately after, and then everyone dies. But then the brother does. But you see the 2 kids, so the main character and his brother witness their father die when they're like children. They're like 7 or 8 or maybe 10 at a push. When they then, it ages them up by, you've got to say minimum 10 years.
Yeah.
So, but in these 10 years, the village is fine. They don't mention that every year they send out people to try and take on the whale god, because when you see how many huts there are or houses, there's only there's like 100, maybe 200.
Yeah.
So you think let's argue, even if there are 400 men, okay, when they go out to take the whale god, there's at least 12. I think there's probably about 20-ish each time.
Yeah, I'd say.
So if that happened every year, you'd want the entire village out. So I'm like, okay, so clearly when the grandfather and then the father do it, it seemingly is, it never mentions it. So I think that no one else goes out again till the older brother does, which has got to be, even if maybe it's 6 years, but even then it's 6 to 10 years.
And they do say that the whale is kind of gone away. They do kind of sort of say that.
But it goes and comes back. It's only in the area for like a few days.
Yeah.
But it's nowhere near them.
But then also they go, you must now train for the next year because you're still not ready.
Yeah.
and it's going to be back in a year, and that's when you're going to do it. And that's when the majority of the story takes place, is between the whale going away and them going, right, I'm going to do it now.
They age up, the brother dies, and then they go to the last remaining friend. You need to be the one, or the village elder says, who's going to do it? And he goes, I'll be the one to kill the whale god, and in exchange for that, he'll get the elder's name, land, and get to marry his daughter, which the game character doesn't even want.
No.
For some reason, because he's already got like a girlfriend.
Yeah, like...
And then also the training happens a little bit, and then it doesn't.
Yeah.
But again, my big issue with the film, that isn't the really problematic stuff.
We'll get to that.
The biggest issue in the film for me is, unlike Orca, the killer whale after the event that occurs in that, again, check out our review of that, is overtly destroying the village and causing problems. It literally caused explosions.
Yeah. So it has an actual vendetta.
But when you see the whale god, it's not only that the whale is only there once a year, but it's so far off the coast, they have to actually sail for a little while to get there. So I don't understand why they seem to think the whale is getting them when you need to be whalers. And even they even say in the year gap, they go, you've trained, you've killed a whale, and you've got the blubber or whatever, you've killed this whale. So you go, okay, so their whaling community, they're going away and killing these whales, but there's just one whale they can't kill that only shows up once a year that's nowhere near you.
Yeah.
So why are you all going after it?
Doesn't affect you, doesn't come in land, doesn't... It's literally minding its own business each of these times, and they go, right, I've got to kill it. Again, I think it's a cultural thing as well with the whale hunting and stuff.
It becomes a thing about honor.
Yeah, and avenging themselves and doing the right thing. And the introduction, I think, spoke about all that and the toxic masculinity of it all. Yeah. And what is a man and how they manage that. So I get it, but I still had problems with it, because also, like, he finally is going to do it. He's going to confront it. We'll speak about the other stuff soon, but I'm going to sort of spoil.
We have to give context.
Yeah, we'll give context for that, but I'll sort of spoil the ending in regards to, because there's there's a subplot and there's a main plot. The main plot is him killing the whale. Yeah. So is it Sharky? I want to say Shaki, or
I could honestly, I don't know any of the characters.
So
Shaki's the hero. Kishu's the bad guy.
We got it. We got there in the end. So we're very tired. This is our last one. So at the end, he goes up to his partner at the time's grandfather, who knew his grandfather and sailed with him and was there when he died, and says, how do we kill him? How do we kill the whale god? And he goes, we just do what we always do, throw a net on him and some harpoons. And then what do?
Stab the snout or whatever.
Yeah, cut the snout. Yeah, because that's the trophy. So the village elder wants that snout to prove, and I think it's another incentive for them to go out and risk their lives, because it is a suicide mission.
100%.
And that's what the film is saying. This is a suicide mission. And that's exactly what happens. They go out and they stab it in a few places, but they go, oh, he stabbed it in a vital point. And I was like, there's something lost in translation there. I don't know what the vital, because it just seemed like the same area, basically.
When you're watching him, he's literally just doing this.
Yeah. And he wiggles it about a bit. And then wiggles it about a bit. And then it's like, oh, yeah, so I was just like, I thought they were going to come up like I'll give it to Orca. At least they come up with an interesting way, the finale is somewhat interesting and the locale is somewhat interesting. All they do in this is just show the same footage they showed earlier, basically. Again. Yeah. And this time they succeed. That's the only difference. But also I'm like, how, because it shows the hide is so thick and it's got the calluses on it and the barnacles and whatever else is on it. And I'm like, you're not making any kind of penetration with that.
Yeah, it's so bizarre because the characters' names, I've forgotten them again.
So Sharky and Kishu.
Yeah, so Kishu is the baddie. We say baddie because he does the bad shit, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
But we have to contextualize the main parts of the film. So Sharky, he wants to go first and kill the whale god, but Kishu, he basically goes on there first and jumps on the whale, and he's like, they cut the net on it, they stab it in the side in a few places, and the whale basically stops, and then it climbs on the top, and then is stabbing the top of its head several times, and a little bit of blood's coming out, and stabbing, and then the whale goes underwater, and then comes up, and then he's dead, assumedly drowned, and then Oh God! And then Sharky, Wales. I keep saying he's Sharky, and it's just obviously it's a different
language. Like shark as well.
Exactly, that's what's making my brain crazy. But so Sharky then eventually climbs on there. He does, as you said, literally exactly the same thing that Kishu does, but succeeds.
Yeah.
But is stabbing and stabbing and stabbing and stabbing just for ages.
And then he just uses a smaller knife as well.
Yeah, randomly.
Like
he loses the harpoon.
Yeah, he loses the harpoon or can't grab it or something, and then he's just like, just stab it with a knife.
And then he does kill it, but this is also a bit that then afterwards he's really wounded because apparently he's broken all his arms and legs.
Correct.
But he's sat on top of the whale god, stabbing it loads of times, and then he's like, he just kind of falls off it.
Yeah.
And then it turns out he's broken all his arms and legs, but he was stabbing the thing fine.
Yeah.
I thought if the whale god had gone reared out of the water and fallen on him,
that would have been...
I'd gone, oh, that would make... But it doesn't.
It just goes down, and it does it with Keisha, because Keisha goes under the water for some time, comes up, he's drowned.
Yeah, which makes sense.
Yeah, and that's fine, and he's tied up.
He's got caught in the net.
Yeah, and then later, for some reason, he's then also... Well, I mean, I guess they cut up the whale, don't they? They butcher the whale and bring it in.
But they just leave him.
And they're just like, we'll just leave you there, and just all tied up in a net. Again, horrible guy, which we'll get into shortly. But yeah, he's like, because he repeats himself. He's like, my only opponent is the whale god. It's all I'm interested in. He's not interested in all the stuff the village elder is offering, which I think is good, and it is quite heroic. And what he does do with this other person he's interested in,
because there's interpersonal relationships going on.
Yeah, there's going on, which again is a bit more complicated, but we'll get into that very shortly when we want to, when we need to, because we will very shortly, very shortly. But yeah, I struggled with it. I like some of the things they're exploring. I think given what we'll talk about shortly, I do think the female characters are somewhat strong.
Yes, I agree.
Have agency,
surprisingly so.
And again, it's 60 years old. So I found that with Akira Kurosawa, the female characters were surprisingly strong and fascinating and had a lot of depth. And I think they do here as well. And they're living in this, again, toxic masculine world that they have to kind of try and get by. Like, the elder is trying to sell off his daughter, and she said straight away, she was like, I do not want that. I absolutely do not want that. But she kind of accepts it, kind of does like the Sharky character. Kind of, there's a little bit where it's like, will they, won't they? And then he says, I don't want you. And she's kind of a little bit put off by it, which again shows depth.
Yes.
Then the complication of those feelings.
All the females have their own. There's only 4 female characters, really. No, 5, I'd say. Maybe there's a mum, sister, love interest 1, love interest 2, and sister.
Yeah.
Mum, sister, love interest 1, love interest 2.
Yeah.
I think maybe there was another one, but the woman in the bar who's kind of like who gives people shit. She says a couple of things.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so there's those 5, and they are those characters are fine and things, and surprisingly progressive for certain respects. Yeah. And the whale, I did find in the middle section, outside of the pretty bad fighting.
Yeah.
And outside of the bits we haven't got to yet, with the main character like Sharky or Shaki, whatever, him. Basically every character approaching him and going, I want you to marry this person, I want you to do this, and he goes, I don't care what you think, I focus only on the whale god. Him saying that over and over again, I was like, I get it, and it kind of shows his obsession, him just saying
tunnel vision.
And then there's even a bit which is quite cool, which is his like 9 months or so into that, there's a guy who wants to marry his sister, his younger sister, and he goes off to become a doctor. Then he comes back and then goes, and when he first goes off, he says, well, I'm going to go off and be a doctor and come back. Your village is mad. You've all become obsessed with the whale god. And the main character is really angry about it. And then 9 months later when he comes back, the main character's like, no, please take my sister, save her from this madness. And you go, okay. But then he just continuously, he recognizes the madness and then continuously just goes, more about the whale god. My only emotion is hating the whale god. I hate the whale god more than I love anything.
Yeah, and he's criticizing the madness of the village, but he's well in the madness as well.
Yeah,
like he's
equally so. And what's worse is that the antagonist, Kishu, is literally, he wants to kill the whale god so he can get the village elder's daughter, the money, the wealth, the notoriety, all that kind of stuff for the wrong reasons. But he wants that. That's what he wants. He wants all that.
And he's an outsider. He's not part of the village.
He's come into this community, and all he wants to do is kill the whale god and get all the riches. But our main character wants to kill the whale god, but doesn't want any of the riches. He just wants to kill the whale god because he's saying, killed my dad, killed my grandfather, whatever. And it's fine. I'm fine with those elements of it. But then, the end of the film is that, so this is spoilers, but again, you can't find this film anywhere.
Yeah.
But the main character, and again, it's Moby Dick, basically, is the main character. He returns, his arms and legs are broken, and he's basically dying, and he asks, while he's in this kind of cot thing, to be put out to shore next to where the head of the whale they killed is, and he basically just wants to sit there and stare at it and vaguely talk to it for like 3 days, and it's just kind of left there. And then there's this really weird conversation, which I also can't wrap my head around, which is when the village elder basically says, I want you to marry my daughter because of what we agreed. And he goes, well, I don't want to. And literally, I'm going to die in 2 days. Yeah. I'm going to die at sundown, man, at this point. I'm not going to marry your daughter. No. She doesn't really want to marry him. She just says, I kind of have to because you did kill the whale god. I have to keep my promise.
Honourably, keep that.
But also, our main character, before he went away, he married his girlfriend.
Yes.
Which is also a confusing thing.
Which
also, this
cancelled out the need for him. And they talk about it. He's like, I am already married now. I didn't want it, and now I can't take it. And then they're butthurt because he can't now do it and take it.
And he's like, I'm going to die in a day anyway, so I can't take on your name and become... Because he's like, the village elder's like, you need to become the village elder. He's like, I'm literally laying here with broken arms. Like, I'm going to die today. Why would you want that? Which makes very little sense to me. But also, the community itself, interestingly enough, is a Christian community. Which in Japan, there were instances, several, where Christian missionaries would go over. There's a film by Martin Scorsese called Silence, which is awful. It's nearly 3 hours long. I was so hyped to go see it at the cinema. I basically pushed two of my mates to go with me because I love Scorsese films, or some of them, and then it was biggest regret, and it sucked ass. It was really boring, and it's all about Christian missionaries going over. Was got Andrew Garfield and Adam Driver in, who are amazing, but they literally go over there, and the whole film is centered around sympathy for these Christians or Catholics who went to Japan against the advice of their own church, to convert a people to a religion when they don't even speak the same language. And it's meant to be this whole thing about how feeling bad for these Christian missionaries going over there and forcibly converting a nation that overtly doesn't want you to. So that's the whole thing. But so this nation is Christian, which is fine, but I don't know the relevance of it. Because the weird thing is what also Stephen Sloss said when he was introducing the whole thing, was that the whale in a lot of cultures in Japan actually has got a potentially spiritual significance.
Mythological.
But Christianity doesn't have that. No. So why did they make this whole village Christian? Because it doesn't affect the plot in any way, apart from maybe the marriage thing. But they do have marriage in Japan that's not Christian.
Yeah. Is there a story like Jonah and the Whale? Is that a thing?
Isn't that just Moby Dick?
Maybe, I don't know. I feel like there's like, tell us. But I think there's like a Bible story about that. But like you said, I agree with you, because it doesn't affect the plot. It's there, kind of tacked on. You've got a white guy playing the priest or pastor or whatever you want to call him. But yeah, it's an interesting like wrinkle, but it's not like they say. I think the only thing that they say is like we shouldn't move him. He must die in his own house or home. And the elder's like, no, we will do what he asks. And it's like a sin to do it or something, they say.
Yeah.
When he's dying. But I was like, no, this is what we agreed. I can do this, even if you won't marry my daughter, this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think let's get into it. Man. Let's just do it.
Before we get to that, before we get to the problematic stuff. So the issue with the film, not even talking about this problematic stuff we're going to get into, which is multifaceted, is
absolutely.
We wanted a Moby Dick style whale Japanese kaiju movie.
Sure.
We got 10 minutes of chaotic kind of whale kaiju stuff at the start, 15 or so minutes near the end of that kind of thing. It was a bit anticlimactic, but fine. We got 25 odd minutes of whale kaiju stuff.
Yeah.
What we also got was an hour and 15 minutes of, or maybe an hour 10 with credits, of vaguely interpersonal stories on land where one character is just incessantly going, I only care about the whale god. There's problematic stuff we'll get into, and then 4 quite badly choreographed fight scenes. And in between those moments is essentially every single character just shouting at each other the exact same thing.
There's a lot of
infinitely.
There's a lot of I think the intensity is strong. But sometimes I think it's almost overpowering or all consuming, the intensity.
The majority of the dialogue is shouted.
Pretty much. It's just like one note. I'm just yelling at you, you're just yelling at me, and we're yelling about the same thing we've yelled about for the last
and the whale
length of the
kaiju
film.
prosthetics on the water stuff, it looked good.
Yeah.
I felt somewhat immersed in it. I thought those elements were cool.
Yeah.
I am glad I saw those elements, but I feel like the rest of the film, not even talking about the problematic stuff, doesn't make up for how little kaiju stuff we actually got.
Sure.
So all of those things make you think, okay, that doesn't sound like the best film.
No.
Now we add in two really, really, really big problems that are very, very, very hard to get past.
Awful. Yeah.
Do you want?
I'll try, Mike. I think you've said enough for both of us already, but I'll try my best. So the introduction again by Stephen Slosh mentioned this kind of like as a proviso. By the way, this will deal with sexual assault, and we were like, okay.
Yeah.
And Kishu, who is the aggressive, angry, drunk, antagonist, not a nice guy, not a nice guy at all.
He calls himself evil.
Yeah, he says, I am evil. You should know I'm evil. I'll get into that a little bit more, but he sexual assaults Sharky's girlfriend effectively, or partner.
Yeah, and later in the film they even say the word rape.
Yeah, they use
she
the term.
says it.
Yeah, she says it. They use the term, and then 9 months passes while they're waiting for the whale to return. She is then found by Sharky on the beach in labor and given birth, and she apologizes to him, which is problematic.
Because they're like boyfriend, girlfriend, but they've never slept together.
Like, kind of betrothed, but not. And they've not got to a point where they've been sexually active together. But he helps her. He doesn't question her, doesn't ask her about anything. He's just there for her and supports her. Again, that is touching and that is nice, and the character doing that. But we see Kishu has, it's Kishu's baby. But she doesn't tell him. He doesn't want to know. It's like, I'm the baby's father. This is my child. That's it. We're getting married. We're going to be together.
Sharky basically adopts a child.
Yes.
He knows is Kishu's child, which was a product of the sexual assault.
I don't think he knows it initially. I think when they confront each other, because the baby is then born, it goes to be baptized as well, like you mentioned, which very, is unusual. They come out and Kishu is stood there, and they've already had this kind of antagonistic thing. There's a scene where Sharky is in the bar and Kishu says, fight me, because this agreement that the elder has made is only these two guys are the only people that have agreed to do it. Every other fisherman, but then they do go out later anyway. But these are the two guys that say, we're going to cut off the snout and we're going to get.
I think we get first dibs.
Yeah, we get first dibs.
The first one to climb on the way.
Yeah, and which is when Kishu at the end goes out. But so he walks over to them, and Kishu looks at the baby. Looks at, I think her name is E.I. Her name,
the girlfriend character who gets attacked.
Yeah, I think her name is E, and he knows it, and then he sees Kishu and he immediately goes, "Look at this lovely baby. This is my child. Isn't this amazing?" And he goes, "Yes, this is a beautiful child." And this is the I think this moment would have been fine until we get to the ending. This moment is quite complex.
Yes.
So just bear in mind, I'm not condoning anything that Kishu has done or anything that he attempts to do. I'm not forgiving him. There is no redemption for him for me in this film.
No.
And we'll get to that. But what happens here is the subtext is he knows it's his baby. He is an evil guy and is all about greed. He's a horrible piece of shit. He knows this. He calls himself evil in the scene, and he knows that if Sharky goes out there, he will die, killing the whale god. So he says, do not go out there. You'll never do it. You're cowardly. You have a loving family. You have all this stuff, all this beautiful. Raise your child. It'll be amazing. I will do the killing. I will get the whale god. I will get all these riches that I want. I'm purely there for that. So it's a complex thing because he's saying he is a horrible, horrible man, but even though a horrible, 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 horrible man, like I will put that exclamation point there, can still do a good, honorable, or nice thing, even though they are legitimately horrific and horrible.
Yes.
Again, does not redeem the character. It still does an awful thing.
There's one nice moment in a sea of horrendous atrocities.
And it's done very, very expertly and very well. And even though it is foreign language, it is 60 years old, you can read that quite clearly. I think the subtext is there.
Always down to, you'll be the good dad. You shouldn't go out on the suicide mission. You stay here and be this good dad to basically my child.
Exactly.
You take care of him.
There's multiple layers going on, and I perceive them all, and that I thought was very good.
That's where the film I started to go, okay.
Yeah.
But and this was before they go out, so I was like, oh, this is where the film's going to turn and become really great.
Yes.
Then we get the going away bit, and the whole, which we've spoken about and stuff, which is
the killing of the whale.
Which is a bit anticlimactic, but it's fine.
Yeah.
And then they come back, and this is where already, obviously, sexual assault's in the film, and they deal with it in a way.
Yeah.
And then this is the part where it goes from being an issue to, in my view, completely unraveling almost the entire film.
Undermining itself, doubling down.
And ruining this nicest moment that was had.
That complex, well presented, well thought out, well performed piece of cinema, which has so much complexity.
Yeah.
At this moment, I'll carry on, Mike, because I know you've said a lot already with this. So we get to the end. E has revealed it's Kishu's, even though Sharky figured it out when he came to the church for the baptism.
When Sharky's in the cot, ready to die.
Kishu is already dead, and we see him wash up on the shore, and he's all mangled and forgotten about. And even though nobody else knows about this that's happened, even though they just don't like him anyway. And he was the first one to go, and that's again why he's the first one to jump and kill the whale, is because he still wants Sharky to be the dad.
He weakened the whale so that Sharky could kill him.
And again, the vital point thing, he was doing all of that work. So again, doesn't seem that effective to me, but he does, and he sacrifices himself doing it. And again, trying to strengthen that point we had earlier in the film that we've just mentioned. However, we get to the end. E are together. They're married. They have the baby. They've agreed to stay together. They all of the stuff is out, and Sharky is in his little coffin, basically speaking to the whale god. E comes over for almost the final time, and he says, "I know all this. I know everything, and I think you should forgive Kishu."
Well, he says you need to.
Or you need to forgive Kishu, which takes away everything we've kind of worked up to and everything the film has said about everything, basically. And it doesn't work, and it's offensive. It is offensive.
Yeah.
There's no other way to say. Again, we are part of the Western world. This is 60 years ago. Japanese culture is very different from our own, but still, I think for most modern audience members, this would be too much. And I'm glad Stephen Sloss didn't spoil it, but I feel like this is not the message you go out on, because I think the messages they had previously were more interesting. And it felt almost like when I saw Captain America recently, and there's one line that is like, we can all just get along together, even though we're totally polar opposites in our political opinions. We can still be mates, which I felt is like an absolute studio note from Disney, because they don't want to piss off all the MAGA people or the MAGA people. I felt like this is almost like, oh, we should say he was actually okay, or this, or apologize for it, or he has redeemed himself, which he absolutely has not.
It fully boils down to, literally, and I'm going to say some language which is not sugarcoating it.
No.
It boils down to a man, a woman, and another man, and a man's girlfriend gets raped by another man.
Yeah.
So the boyfriend of this woman then takes on the child, adopts it essentially. Then the rapist dies. The man is dying, and he says to his girlfriend, who has given birth to this other man's child, and after marrying her and stuff like that,
trauma that she's experienced,
and says, and when she's crying and apologizing to him that she was raped, he says, "You need to forgive your dead rapist." And also, you should be sorry, and you need to forgive your dead rapist. That's what it, and I'm like, I don't know how you can rationalize it. I can't wrap my head around it.
What he should have said is, you need to forgive yourself.
Exactly.
If he said you need to forgive yourself, because the thing is, she apologizes all the way through the film for it happening,
and he never says that's not your fault.
Yeah,
he never does.
So he said he should have realized, you need to forgive yourself for this. It was not your fault. It was not your doing. It's the culture around this, the times, it's culture of this village, and it's Kishu's, nature this awful nature. Can't stress that enough. Awful character. Awful. And that's what you should have said. And then her kind of sweet, because by that point I'm like, I'm out.
Yeah.
I am absolutely. I can't.
Just can't get past it.
And there's this lovely song, this kind of song she sings on the shore with her baby, and it's kind of this mournful kind of what's the word, requiem song.
I just remember something that makes this worse.
Oh, don't. It's already bad enough.
She overtly says, when she's apologizing to him and stuff, she says, before she gives birth to the child, we forgot to mention, again, this is going to be triggering, she tries to abort the baby herself numerous times. She says she throws herself off cliffs to try and abort the baby of her rapist. And again, at the end of the film, he tells her she needs to forgive him. Yeah, which makes it even worse.
Her shame of that is like, there's so many levels to this. Again, we are two, blokes talking about this as best we can, given the sensitive nature of it and topic of it, and we have strong feelings on this, and I'm sure the women who saw it as well probably have strong opinions. I'd be very interested to see the letterbox reviews after this one. Now, I want to also say I am glad that Forbidden World to pick this, because I'm glad to watch it.
Agree.
I am not saying cancel Forbidden Worlds or cancel this film.
No.
I'm glad they show these films uncut, uncensored, as they were presented, so they can be reviewed and rated. And again, I adore that they have the variety of foreign language films and the age of the films and through the different eyes and view scopes and things.
And just the theme especially.
Yeah, and the theme fits perfectly in the theme. And the fact that they do pick these, I still think the picks are good picks.
Yes.
It's just our particular feelings on any of the individual films. I think the lineups and the way they work out, like we said with Alligator, it's the best way to knock out the end of the festival. It is an absolute banger. And I like the kind of peaks and troughs. We have Below before Alligator, which is a bit slower and a very good film in its own right, but it's not quite the same tone or same feeling or same reaction the audience would get from it. So we're not saying that this is a bad pick, or we just don't particularly like this film. But I said that every year. There's how many films are there this year? There's been
13. No, there's 12 films and a short film showcase and a documentary.
Yeah. We're not going to like all of them.
No.
It's impossible for us to like absolutely everything. No. I'm fairly forgiving on most stuff. I think more so than maybe. I think you can be quite I think Andy can be quite harsh sometimes, but not unnecessarily so. But I think you make some very, very solid points. But I think we feel pretty much the same about this one.
I will say the end of this film though, which a little element I do like to kind of almost bring it back off that stuff, which is when he dies, he basically then becomes the whale.
Yes.
And which I was like, that's cool.
Yeah, but again, which is again a little bit like Orca when he says I'm his drunk driver.
Yes,
which
it links with that, and I was like, okay, I can see on principle how this works. I just don't understand. It's literally
why do we need this subplot?
That last conversation of basically punishing the woman for something she had no control over, that she suffered over for a very long period of time, and all to equate to the biological father and the adoptive father both dying anyway, immediately. And I'm just like, that's my issue. But again, no shade on people who like the movie.
No, if
there are elements of the movie I can understand if you enjoy.
It's a very well-made movie, like stylistically and the way it's shot, and
music's great, cinematography's great,
absolutely.
And for the most part, I could understand what was going on. And the characters, did feel individual. There's just this, but you and I just couldn't get past it.
And don't get me wrong. There are offensive things in films we've seen this week.
Yes,
this whole festival. But again, I'm glad they're in there, because I think there's more problems raised when you start editing and censoring films for other people. That's your job, that's your, my dad the other day was complaining that my nephew is playing Grand Theft Auto 5, and he was like, can we not turn off the swearing? And I was like, Dad, that's the responsibility of the parent if they don't want them playing that game. Because there is an age rating, that's what they're there for. If you don't want it, then take it off him. If you're not happy with it, take it off him. But it's not their responsibility to edit and censor the product they've made and have it hindered. Because you're a bit like, ooh, there's an F-bomb in here, you know. So I'm glad we are showing them as they are and as they were meant to be. And sometimes in some cases even better because of the screen and everything. But yeah, and I think it's important. And you and I, when we talk about things like this, we will always contextualize them, much like Forbidden Worlds do. They always explain, you know, there's this, there's that, there's these elements. And most people know what they're going in for when they come to these festivals, unless it is something like we've not researched, like Whale God. We just go, let's just see what happens.
Not that you couldn't research Whale God.
No, true. Yeah, fair point.
Literally, you can't find this out. But I will say, I'm glad we watched the film. I'm glad Forbidden Worlds showed it. Shout out to Forbidden Worlds again, as always, and Stephen Sloss for giving that great introduction and stuff.
Yeah, really sold it. Really, absolutely sold it, and gave it real context.
And I am glad that we watched this film, but I will not condone it in a sense, and I will not ever watch it again. But you know, it's still interesting, and it was great talking about it and kind of getting this out because we were both talking about that. But to wrap this up, I'll say on my part, which is follow Forbidden Worlds Film Festival, support them wherever you can. Please share, comment. You can watch the video version of this, or you can listen to the audio version of this. Also, myself and Spider Now, we're going between our feeds, so to get the full picture of all the coverage of Forbidden Worlds Film Festival, of all the reviews, some really amazing interviews that we've managed to get, and some Q&A stuff we've recorded, and some other stuff as well. Please make sure you subscribe to both of our feeds, whether you're listening to this on audio feed or on YouTube, on either our YouTube channels. Please share, subscribe, support us as well as Forbidden Worlds Film Festival. An incredible time, and thank them for allowing us to be the official press on this, and for allowing us to have access to what we did. Any final words from yourself, sir?
Again, I'm 100% certain that all the message the film conveys at the end is not supported by Forbidden Worlds. I will guarantee it. Again, Forbidden Worlds are wonderful, and the variety of films they talk about and the variety of people that are involved, you know, like we've said, the LGBTQ plus IA plus community,
very inclusive
people, physical and mental disabilities. Everybody is welcome. It's all for everybody to enjoy. And they would not condone such a message, but they felt that this film was important for it being made and for it to be seen and within the theme. And I still agree with them showing it. I just don't like the film and its message. That's all. And we have both said as much.
Agreed. But please let us know if you've seen this film. We'd love to hear from you about what your thoughts were and things, or if you want to go see this film, please. We'd love to
hear disagree with us, if you really like it, or
open the conversation on any social media place that you are listening to this.
If there's any film that needs more people kind of talking about it or describing it or having an opinion on it, I think it is this one. And to put it out there, leave a letterbox reviews.
Yes,
like many people have been doing. I'm probably gonna do some once we finish the festival itself. I'll pop some out periodically as well, and when we put out this content. But we are so lucky to have been involved in all of this, and
just subscribe and check out all our other amazing content covering Forbidden Worlds. So thank you so much, everyone, and we'll speak to you very soon.